The charter was 1 page, and it came aboard already signed. The DeadLight sat in berth 40 with her locks open to Colvain's ring, berth power in her walls, the morning clatter of the dock coming down the passage. Cricket read the page to the galley over breakfast, in the voice it kept for filings.
Charter of hire,
said Cricket.
The salvage hull DeadLight, Colvain to a charted holding point in the outer shallows and home. Item 1, passage 4 persons and 1 piece of freight, crated and sealed. Item 2, cargo handling at Guild documentation standard.
Then item 3 in the same voice.
The visible presence of a certified crew of good standing.
Trent set his cup down on the ring it had left. He had heard charters ask for tonnage, for tow lines, for silence bought by the day. Item 3 was new.
He's renting us,
said Trent.
He is renting us at double rate,
said Remo, not looking up from his figures.
I accepted before he finished asking. The advance cleared at midnight.
Sarn's name was already at the bottom of the page, set down in a heavy, careful hand. He drank his coffee while the thing was read and added nothing. Whatever he thought of item 3, he had signed beneath it, and that was the whole of his opinion. Trent turned the page over. The back was blank. Double pay bought risk. In the trade he'd been schooled for, it never once bought anything else. There was no risk written anywhere on the sheet, just the standing and the being seen.
Purpose of hire as declared,
said Cricket.
Private memorial gathering, trade attendance. The form gives that declaration 3 lines. He used 5 words.
Who's the memorial for?
said Trent.
The form keeps a line for the deceased,
said Cricket.
He left it blank. He boards at 9, if anyone cares to improve the paperwork.
Nobody asked out loud what a man was buying when he paid double for the look of an honest crew. The page didn't say, and the page was signed. Trent finished his coffee and went down to rig the dollies. "9 o'clock brought the client's freight to the foot of the ramp, and the freight was 1 piece. Trent had staged the dollies for a memorial's worth of goods, seating, dressing, whatever a gathering hauls. What the dock crane set down was a single long crate and a man walking beside it with one hand on the lid. The crate was custom work, tight corners, fitted rails, padding built to the load. It was long, narrow, and shallow. The proportions were a coffin's. No one said the word. Trent moved to take the head of it and was given the foot.
"I'll keep my own hands on this end if it's all the same,"
said the man.
"I've carried it this far. I'd as soon finish the job."
He was 60-odd and dock-dressed, nothing on him new, a big man worn down to the frame of one. At the top of the ramp he gave his name, Cohen Marl, and took Sarn's hand, and did not try to fill the captain's silence with anything. Trent marked that. Most people tried. The dolly went up and over the lock sill. Opha was underfoot in the inboard passage, in her morning spot on the warm stretch of decking. Strangers usually had to be told about Opha. Marl checked the dolly to a walking pace before he reached her and rolled it past with room to spare. She didn't look up. The crate crossed her shadow and went on up the passage, and she stayed at her ease, and that was all. In the hold, Marl asked for a second strap across the head of the crate and named the tie-down points by their right names. He set the tension himself and checked it with a thumb. He had done this work for a living once. The hands said so. At the lock before the ramp came up, Remo gave the client his schedule without being asked for it.
"Cast off at noon,"
said Remo.
"1 gravity the whole way. The flip tomorrow morning. The holding point by 600 on the 3rd day. The figure will not move."
600 on the 3rd day,
said Marlowe, and something in him came down an inch.
"You've no idea how long it's been since anybody gave me an hour and meant it. My own ship's out there now holding the point. She keeps station better without me aboard, if I'm honest."
"An unmanned hull holds 2 decimals tighter,"
said Remo. The passengers came up the ramp at 11:30, 3 of them quiet small bags, dressed for a funeral by trade lights, which is to say clean. 2 kept their own company. The third was a woman of 40-some, with a guild envelope in her coat, creased from a year of carrying. She gave her name as Wella Kern.
My brother crewed the lantern.
Said Wella.
Survey ship. She stopped answering last year out past the shallows somewhere. The guild sent me a form about it.
Trent picked up her bag.
Cabins are aft, ma'am.
Said Trent.
Small, but they run warm.
It wasn't an answer. She hadn't asked him for one. Marl stood in the hold while the crew ran the pre-burn walk, and he wasn't looking at his crate. He was looking at the ship, the patched frames, the mismatched plating, the 40 years of other hulls riveted into this one.
You're the crew that documented the Millie's bite,
said Marl. He said it the way people say the name of a church, and then he let it be. Trent filed it where trade fame goes. The record carried their names and records travel, and got on with the walk. At noon, Colvane took her clamps back, and Ramo eased them out of berth 40 and swung for the shallows. Sarn put 2 fingers to the lock frame on his way forward, and had his word with her, under the noise of the maneuvering. Then the torch lit and gave them back their floor, and the ring turned away behind them to its own business. Marl rode the first hour of the burn down in the hold, on a folding stool beside his freight, one hand flat on the lid. The crew left him to it. Grief gets room on a working ship. The client took his dinners at the crew table, and by the second night out he had the seat nearest the pot, and nobody minded. The galley ran at 1 easy gravity, the flip behind them and the brake pushing, dinner going around. Wella ate with the crew. The 2 quiet passengers took their plates and turned in early. Ofa kept her place by the galley heat and worked at her own supper. Cricket was working on the client.
More coffee for the chaplain,
said Cricket.
Steward, your client is dry.
Trent got up and poured. Marl took the cup and the title both without a blink.
Chaplain was yesterday,
said Marl.
I like Deacon better. It had a working sound to it.
It is customary to object,
said Cricket.
Everyone objects. That is most of the sport.
I've been called worse by better and paid for the privilege,
said Marl. He tried the coffee.
And what do they call you, besides the ship?
Cricket is considered sufficient,
said Cricket.
It's a good name,
said Marl.
A loud little thing you can't ever find in the room? I'd guess you earned it.
I have never yet been stepped on,
said Cricket.
The resemblance runs out early.
Marl laughed at the right half of that and left the rest alone. Nobody at the table had gone a full round with the mind before and come away with the room smiling. The crew was starting to like him and knew it and let it happen anyway. Then the talk went where trade talk goes after dark, out past the lamps. Lost ship.
You all know the shape of it better than I do,
said Marl. He said it to the table, easy, his fork still moving.
Nothing ever taken, nothing broken, no mark on anybody. The cargo sitting right there in the racks, worth years of pay, and the crew gone easy in their chairs. Every hand here has read that bulletin 100 times.
The galley had gone quiet around him without deciding to.
Robbery, you'd understand,
said Marl.
Robbery is honest in its way, but nothing is ever taken, and I got to where I couldn't stop asking why. Why come all that way? Do all of that, and take nothing?
He set the fork down.
Because the point was never the cargo. The point is that you'd know.
He turned his cup a quarter and looked into it.
Old things don't want your goods,
said Marl.
To something that old, an object is nothing. The offense was never that we took. The offense is that we took and said nothing. No leave asked, no word left. Squatters, the lot of us moved into a house because it stood dark and been selling off the furniture ever since. And the owner never died.
He is not wrong about the thefts,
said Cricket.
Nothing recovered from a silent ship has ever been missing from it. I have run the records.
Marl nodded at the ceiling, courteous.
My ship was the wager,
said Marl.
9 years back, I was dockside at the guild hall, closing out a claim, a whole day of paper. She was found adrift 2 weeks on all 6 of my crew aboard. Not a mark, not a call. The guild wrote malfunction, all hands, and shook my hand, and that was the end of her file.
He wasn't performing it. That was the worst of it. He laid it out the way a man lays out an old invoice.
6 of them in 6 different compartments at their stations,
said Marlowe.
Think on what that means. One robber walks a ship, and the second man hears the first man fall. Somebody shouts. Somebody reaches a hatch or a comm or a suit. Every time, everywhere, somebody runs. Nobody ran.
He looked down the table at no one in particular.
6 people in 6 compartments, and not one of them stood up. Tell me how one thing does that.
Trent had an answer's worth of schooling and nothing in it. He had walked a lit ship once, body to body, panel by panel, running every equipment case they ever taught him, and the ship had turned down each one in order. He looked at his plate and kept his silence.
Reckon nobody can,
said Sable from the table's end, and said nothing more all evening. Cricket, which put a number on everything aboard down to the coffee, put none on that. The brake pushed on under the deck plates. For a while the galley was just forks. Then Marl turned to Wella, and his voice came down to the space between them, though he let the table hear.
I'll tell you the one thing I know that's worth your passage, and it costs nothing,
said Marlowe.
Whatever found the lantern, your brother never felt it. None of them ever do. There's no fear in it and no hurt in it. He was at his work, and then he was done working. That much I'd swear anywhere you like.
Wella didn't move for a moment. Then she thanked him. A minute on, she thanked him again. Quieter. Over nothing at all. It was more comfort than the guild's form had carried in a year, and every hand at that table knew no living soul could promise it, and no one said a word to spoil it. Trent gathered the plates. It was something to do with his hands. The break ended at 600 on the 3rd morning, on Remo's figure to the minute, and the point came up in the glass. The Serret holding point was a charted nowhere in the outer shallows, 2 days off the lanes where trade business went when it didn't want watching. The Vigil held the middle of it, a midline hauler with her lamps up and her cargo drum turning. Around her, loose and lawful, a ring of working hulls was gathering. Salvage boats, a couple of haulers, one survey hull anchored off at distance with their locks lit.
Vigil traffic. This is the salvage boat, Augur,
said a voice on the common band.
Holding 200 off your low side. We have consignment for your hold.
The last hour ran weightless. Remo walked her in on thrusters and laid her against the Vigil's spine, hub to hub, where the turning didn't reach. The whole length of the ship stood between their lock and the hold below. He stayed at his boards. Ofa kept him company forward. Neither of them had any business at a memorial, and neither pretended otherwise. The rest went across at the spine and rode the cargo lift down into the drum, where a half-gravity of spin put a floor under things. Then the crew did what the trade pays certified hands to do. They moved freight and rode it down. All morning the buyers' crates came over the lines to the spine, small crates, heavy for their size, and the crew took them below, checked each one against its boat's own list, and set them where the client wanted them set. Sarn kept the log. Sable worked the spine lock, matching crates to manifests. Trent ran the dollies until his shoulders knew it. It was on the last run before noon that he went by the hold with a crate in his arms and the hatch standing open. The client had dressed it. Dark cloth ran the racks in long lanes, and the surrendered pieces lay out on it in ranks, plain matte gray shapes veined in gold, dozens of them, lamplight down the rows. Somebody had set every piece square with its neighbors, and the lamps were placed where they'd catch the veins. It looked, for one long step, like a jeweler's tray the size of a hold. The space was unheated, cargo cold, his breath showed in the lamplight. Piety, Trent figured, and it wasn't his. He had a crate in his arms. He kept walking. Forward of the hold, a compartment had been cleared to bare deck plates. No chairs, no drapery, nothing on the bulkheads. At the head of the room, the crew bolted up a plinth out of cargo frames to Marl's quiet directions and set the long crate on it, closed. There were no seats because none had been asked for. Working crews hold their services on their feet, and Marl knew his congregation. The first masters came down the lift in 2s and 3s through the afternoon, dock-dressed, bareheaded, and Marl met every one of them at the drum hatch. Trent, posted along the wall in guild colors with the rest of the crew, heard the introduction come around again and again. This is the crew that documented the Millie's bite. He said it to every master. Some of them looked at the crew longer than a hired wall wants looking at. There was nothing in that room but deck, a box, and the people coming into it, and the 4 of them along the wall in certified colors. In a room that bare, the eye went to the crew. That was what the double rate had bought. Trent looked down the wall at Sarn. Sarn had heard every introduction the same as him, and Sarn was looking at the bare room too.
"The charter is signed,"
said Sarn.
"Stand your post."
He was a while getting to the first word. 2 sentences was the whole of it, and he did not say anything more about it, then or later. By the evening watch the drum was filling. 40-some souls stood in the cleared compartment by the time the service began, off 19 boats' worth of the trade, in the drum's half-gravity, in loose ranks facing the plinth. No seats, no dressing, the closed crate at the head of the room, and the crew along the walls in guild colors. The trade knows how to stand at a funeral, caps down, feet still, the same manners it keeps at Colvane's board of the lost. Marl read the roll from a written page. Names Trent had never heard, each with its year. The year said plain. The Corella, the Old Favor. Boats a generation gone, and boats gone since he'd been flying. Then a name off this year's bulletins, the Austri Fen.
"The survey vessel Lantern,"
said Marlowe.
"with all hands."
Across the room, Wella took one hand in the other and held on.
"The transport Millie's bite,"
said Marl.
"with all 6 hands."
Trent's jaw set and stayed set, and down the wall nobody in guild colors moved. Last of all, his own.
"The salvage ship Wager,"
said Marl.
6 hands, 9 years lost.
His own dead got the name and the year. No slower and no softer than all the others. Trent had braced for the voice to change. It didn't, and that was the part he minded. Marl folded the page. Nothing in his register changed. There was no line anywhere where the service stopped and something else began.
"You've been told all your lives that they're gone?"
said Marl.
"Dust and ruins and salvage rights. I believed it too. 9 years less a day. They are not gone. They are many, and they are old past counting, and they have begun coming back for what is theirs."
Nobody shifted. In that room, at that hour, it did not sound like selling.
"Every name I read tonight was a notice,"
said Marl.
"Not a raid. Nothing taken. Every hand here knows that much is true. A notice served the only way something that old serves paper. They don't want the goods back. They want it known that we took them and that we knew."
He put his hand flat on the plinth, beside the crate.
"And one of them, one, will still accept a gesture instead of the next notice. Tribute is the wrong word, and it's the word we have. You give nothing back. Property was never the point. You renounce. Out loud before the trade. For good. I carry the pieces to the cairn on your behalf. Your hull goes in the book compliant, and when they come down your lane, they pass over you."
A plain book stood open on a stand at the plinth's side.
9 years you've run this,
said a master in the back ranks, not unkindly.
How does a man ever know it worked?
"He flies home,"
said Marl.
"Every trip, for the rest of his life."
And if a compliant boat is lost anyway, what then?
Said the master.
2 have been in 9 years. Both, it came out after, had kept a piece back,
said Marl. Nobody asked him which 2.
"I don't make the terms, I only carry them."
The answer closed over the question like water. There was nothing in it to take hold of, and nothing in it a man could prove wrong, and Trent watched the back ranks work that out and stop asking. Then a voice came up out of the middle ranks, unasked.
"Roche, Tobin Roche. I run a 2-hand boat out of Colvane, and 13 months back I put every piece she carried into that hold's keeping, marked compliant.
He looked around at the room, steady.
13 months I've flown the same lanes as every man here. I'm still flying. Past that I know nothing, and I don't need to.
Nobody crowded him with questions. The room had heard arguments its whole working life. A living man standing in it was something else. Hale of the auger had stood the entire pitch with his arms crossed and his eyes going between Marla and the book. When Roche finished, he uncrossed them.
3 pieces off the auger,
said Hale at the stand.
Write it plain. 3 surrendered whole, no claim kept.
His hand wasn't steady on the pen. He signed all 3 lines anyway.
Captain,
said Cricket, on the crew link. Private under the room.
I have been counting while he talks. The accounts balance, the years check, the survivors are real, the lost are real, and pay and leave proves him while pay and die proves you broke his terms. There is no number in it anywhere for me to catch. Handsome work, if it is work.
Then,
Evans, Captain, that it is.
Sarn stood his wall and gave the link nothing back. At the book, the line of masters grew. The room had been standing an hour, and nobody had shifted for the door. Marl brought out a copybook, board-bound, worn at the corners, and held it with both hands. The knowledge half of the offer. He had taken the testimony down himself. He said, 4 nights dictation at the cairn, by lamp. Then he read,
You were not robbed.
Marl read.
Robbery is a thing the young do to the young. We posted notice.
He turned the page and smoothed it down.
We are not returned. We never left. We were quiet, and now we are less quiet. What comes next will not look like war. It will look like the notices coming more often.
Nobody coughed. Nobody's boots moved on the deck. This was the half the room had truly come for, not the passing over, the knowing, the answer the trade had wanted since the first silent ship. Wella had closed her eyes to listen. Then he came to the fresh pages.
I walked the transport you call the Millie's Bite.
Marl read.
Her people were at their ease. 3 held cards, and the pot was netted under an elastic mid-game. A 4th sat over his tray, the spoon still in its slot. A 5th slept with a reader lit at the end of its cord. And her engineer sat at his desk in compartment 9 of her second deck, his pen in his hand over a number he did not finish.
Trent had stood in that galley with his helmet on his belt. He knew the cards, he knew the spoon.
Captain,
said Cricket, on the crew link, quiet, under the reading.
I have the certified record open beside him. The account describes the galley of the Millie's Bite as
Nothing for half a beat.
I described it.
Then it went on, even as ever.
Word for word in places. The cards, the tray, the reader, the desk. It holds nothing the record does not hold, and it walks her in the record's own order. Galley, bunks, deck 2 aft. A witness describes a ship however their eyes went. A reader describes it in the order the pages ran.
Marl read on above it, and the room stood still to listen.
And, Captain,
said Cricket,
the record's first filing set her engineer in compartment 9, deck 2. That was an error mine. The addendum corrected it to 6-9 days on. The account says 9.
Then,
his God repeats my typo.
Sarn answered at his own pace, every word whole, his rigging voice, where nothing is allowed to mean 2 things.
Cricket. Take the record, the addendum, the account, and the dates, and run them side by side to certainty. Transmit nothing. Speak of this on this link and nowhere else. The service is mid-flow and the room is full of the grieving. We do not turn it over on a likeness. If it proves our own certification is being quoted into a fraud and the record gets corrected where the whole trade can read the correction, not before it proves and not 1 minute after.
Running, Captain,
said Cricket. At the stand, a Master Trent didn't know bent over the book with the pen in his fist, and another waited behind him. The account had done what the roll had not. The trade was signing. Trent held his post, and his face, the whole answers sat behind his teeth, waiting on a cross-check, while the room stepped up to the book 2 at a time. Sable held the aft end of the crew's wall, 3 ranks of standing backs between her and the plinth, watching hands because hands were what she knew. Marl threw the crate's latches in the quiet and lifted the lid away alone. No one helped him with the lid. No one ever had. The thing inside filled the crate end to end, long as a tall man, thick through the middle, the same at both ends, every line on it even. Gold ran over the skin of it in worked lines, laid on, patterned, and the pattern repeated along its length. It was a thing made to be looked at, and the room looked. Then the lid was down on the deck, and Marl's hands went back in with a purpose. Sable knew from every bench she'd ever stood at. She was facing the hatch. She had no memory of turning. Her heart was going, her boots had half her weight already, and the room behind her hadn't moved at all. She put her feet back where the wall wanted them. She said nothing to anyone. Marl laid both palms on the thing and bowed his head. Warmth came up off it first, then a hum, low one note. Gold light rose along the worked lines and lay across the faces of the front rank, then the next rank. Then all of them. Nothing came. A breath went by, another. The hum held its one note, and nothing anywhere in the room changed except the light, and the room, all together, leaned toward it. The warmth reached her face from 3 ranks back, steady even, the warmth of stove throws. In her shirt pocket the shards sat against her ribs and made no answer to any of it. No chill through the cloth, no spike, nothing, the whole time the gold light stood in the room. Her hand was on the pocket flap. She took it away. Her shoulders came down from wherever they'd been. Her back met the bulkhead and she stood easy on her own 2 boots and watched. Marl raised his hands and the hum thinned away and the light died back down the lines. The room made a sound, all of it at once, low. He woke it again. He stilled it and woke it a 3rd time, palms down, palms up, and it answered him each time exactly on his cue. By the 3rd waking masters who had signed nothing at the roll were stepping to the book 2 and 3 together. Then he stood aside and let them come up. One at a time they laid their palms flat on the skin of it, and it was warm to every hand. And men stood with their caps down and their palms on it and stayed longer than the line behind them liked. A master near the front wept without moving. Wella touched it last, both hands, a long time. On the crew link, under all of it, Cricket spoke to the captain alone.
The cross-check is finished,
said Cricket.
Record, addendum, account, dates, side by side. It proves entire.
The gold light lay on 40 faces. At the stand, the line was still growing. The gold light was still up when Sarn left the wall. Trent watched him cross to the plinth's edge, unhurried, a head above everyone in the room, while the line still filed past the book and the talk of the room covered him. He stopped beside Marl and spoke low, and Trent was near enough to hear it.
The account you read tonight is our record,
said Sarn.
The certified record of the Millie's bite, filed by this crew, read back to us with the file numbers taken off. You will want to end this yourself, and I am giving you the time to do it.
Of course it matches your record,
said Marl. He said it gently.
It happened, Captain. You wrote down what was there. He told me what was there. 2 true accounts of one night agree. That is all you have found.
Then hear the rest,
said Sarn.
Our first filing set her engineer in compartment 9. That was an error, and it was ours. 9 days later, the addendum corrected it to compartment 6. The error existed on paper for 9 days and nowhere else. Your account says 9.
He let that stand a moment.
What walked her decks would know her decks. Only a reader of our first filing repeats our first filing's mistake.
Marl stood with his hands still on the warm gold and said nothing. All charter long he had answered everything. Trent watched his face and waited for the answer, and none came, and the face didn't break. It emptied.
Cricket,
Said Sarn.
send it.
Sent.
Said Cricket. On the open band now, every hull on the ring.
The account, the certified record, the addendum, and the dates side by side at documentation standard. It reads in about a minute and a half.
It took the room 90 seconds, and it went in waves. The first slates chirped in pockets down the ranks. Men read standing, the glow of their screens under their chins, and the sound of the room went from grief to questions, to anger. A master near the stand dragged the book off it to find his own page. Another held it open against his knee and scored his name out so hard the pen went through. The line at the book stopped being a line. Hale came through the standing crowd fast. Trent was moving before Hale cleared the second rank. The crowd came behind Hale in a surge, and the plinth rocked. Trent got his back to it, one hand flat on the crate's rim. He stood where the man would have to run through him to get anywhere.
Easy. Not him. He's the guild's now,
said Trent. 7 words, low, no heat. Hale stopped a hand's width off him, breathing hard, and the crowd behind Hale stopped with him. Nobody was hurt. Nobody got hurt after either, though the room wanted it the whole rest of the night.
Then open it,
said Hale.
Open that thing where every man here can see inside it.
Trent found the seam in under a minute, a made seam under the gold with fasteners. His screwdriver walked them out one by one while the room watched, and he laid the gold shell open on the plinth in 2 halves. Inside was a power cell off a hand lamp, a heater coil, the kind a galley stove runs, a little amber flood lamp, warm-colored, aimed at the shell to throw the glow. The gold on the outside was real, worked by a jeweler, the one honest expense in the whole of it. It was not even a forgery. It was a prop. The coil still had power. It hummed its one note out of a speaker the size of a coin, and the note that had crossed 40 faces an hour ago came up thin off the open benchwork. Hale reached in with 2 fingers and pinched the wire, and the note stopped. The room went down the drum to the hold in one crowd, and they brought Marl with them to open it, and he opened it without being made to. The lamps still stood where they'd been set to catch the gold. Then the masters started pulling the dark cloth off the racks, and it came away in lanes. Under it, wired to every piece, were tags. Lot numbers, grades, prices in a plain trade hand, priced against the Elith buyer chain. A folding ledger sat in a rack-end slot, greasy at the spine, every entry in Marlowe's own writing, lot, grade, value, date received. 9 years of columns. The guild had taught him to tag and value salvage, and the habit had outlived everything else the guild taught him. Trent stood in the hatch with the crowd pressing past. He had walked by this hold once and thought of a jeweler's tray. It was 1. The room had been loud about the lie up in the hall. It went quiet about the tags.
There's a price on mine,
said a master by the racks, mostly to himself, his own piece in his hand. Nobody found a lot missing. That was the strange part, and it stayed strange. 9 years of tribute, and as far as any list could show, the man had kept every piece, sold nothing, sent nothing anywhere. The hold was full. Sarn's voice came down from the hatch.
The documentation stands transmitted and will carry the guild claim,
said Sarn.
The tribute goes home with the boats that brought it, checked out against the owner's own ledger, beginning at first watch. Certified hands will run the count.
2 masters took Marl by the arms then, not roughly, and turned him toward the ladder. He didn't resist. At the hatch he stopped, and they let him stop, and he looked back down the racks at 9 years of it under the lamps.
I'm not lying about what is out there,
said Marl.
I'm only lying about being able to reach it. Someone had to give them something.
Then they walked him up the drum to his own cabin and set a watch on his door. The trade does not hang men, it writes them up. The Vigil would go home to Colvane under buyer escort, and the claim would be waiting at the dock when she got there. Not everyone was done with him. Roche had the ladder half blocked, still arguing to the masters, to the room, to the backs of men carrying crates.
Papers get a number wrong, and you'll throw out my year?
Said Roche.
I flew 13 months on those lanes. Something kept me breathing, and it wasn't a heater coil.
Nobody took him up on it. And by the lift, out of the way, Wella stood with her coat on. She wasn't crying and she wasn't angry, and when the masters went by her with the first reclaimed crates, she asked it quietly once of the room at large.
When would the next contact have been?
Said Wella.
If it had been true, when would he have come again?
Nobody answered her. The crates went by. First watch put the crew down in the drum at the hold's mouth, in the spin's half-gravity. The reclaimed crates stood in rows, and the owner's ledger lay open on a crate lid. Trent ran the count, crate by crate, against Marl's own columns, lot, grade, boat, and what had been tags yesterday were receipts by morning. Certified hands at documentation standard, giving a holdback to the trade one signature at a time. Hale came through in the second hour with his ledger line struck and his 3 crates on a dolly. He shook Trent's hand at the foot of the lift, and then he shook it again, and took the auger's 3 pieces up and home across the lines. By mid-morning, it was happening at every lock on the ring.
All that dread for a heater coil,
said a master going by to his mate, and got his laugh. The bereaved went out on homebound boats through the morning. Wella went last on a hauler making for Colvane. Trent carried the bag he'd carried aboard for her 4 days ago and gave it to her at the sill. The guild envelope rode where it had ridden all charter in her coat.
Thank you for the passage,
said Wella.
It was a kind ship.
He knew the shape of what she was carrying home. He didn't say anything. There was nothing true to say. She went up the ring, and the lock cycled, and the work went on behind him. Toward the end of the loading, the guild traffic cycle came due, and Cricket read it over the crew band, the same as any morning.
Quarter dues post at Colvane on the 1st,
said Cricket.
The Iskar border pickets report heavy traffic inside their own line. No lanes closed. A buoy maintenance window runs 3 days on the Colvane approach, and the hauler Dovetail, 11 days overdue on her Colvane leg, found by a lane sweep this morning. All hands. Logged malfunction. All hands.
The next boat's master wanted his signature. A dolly needed turning at the lift. The count went on. By mid-afternoon, the last crate was signed out, and the ledger went into a sealed evidence bag with the guild's mark on it. Remo took them off the spine at the turn of the watch, 1 departure logged, and the torch came up, and down was down again, and Colvane was 2 days off. Behind them the point was emptying, boat by boat, every hull for home. And the Vigil fell away under her escort, lit end to end, her hold dark and cold, her owner in a cabin with the lock turned around. Sarn came forward at the end of the evening watch, the burn steady underfoot, and Remo spoke without being asked, which meant he had been running the question a while.
The client's fee,
said Remo.
Both halves of the charter were delivered, transport and muscle. The paper does not ask whether the client was honest. The fee is earned, and it stays.
Sarn heard it through and let it stand.
The bereaved pay nothing,
said Sarn.
3 passages at lane rate remitted to their hulls,
said Remo.
4% of the fee.
His hands moved on the board, and it was done. Neither ruling touched the other, and that was the end of the accounting. The crew went down after supper, and the passage lamps dimmed, and the burn ran on. Sarn kept the hours he always kept, which were all of them. At the plot table alone, he brought the ship's book out of its drawer and opened it to the running page. He wrote the job in under its true description: security and transport, private gathering. The dates. The fee less 4%. Then the client line. His pen stopped over it a moment longer than the entry needed. He wrote the name in full, Cohen Marl, and closed the book and went aft to walk his ship. The last night of the burn home, the galley got its evening back. Shirt sleeves, cards, the second best cups. The job had paid, the client was locked in his own cabin 2 days behind them, and being shut of him improved everyone's game. Trent dealt. Sable played her hands slow and won anyway. Remo sat in at the table's end and kept his cards close to his chest plates. The pot was matchsticks, and Remo was winning it as usual. Ofa was tucked in at the warm end of the counter, easy, and had been there all evening. Between hands, racking the deck, Trent said it half to himself.
The whole trade believed him unreal, had them hook, line, and sinker,
said Trent.
At least nobody's ever actually seen a vanished.
That is not completely accurate,
said Cricket. The shuffle stopped.
Those 2 frames that were never filed,
said Cricket.
One off our own deck camera, that blurry image, and one from deck 2 of the Millie's Bite. 2 different cameras that have nothing in common other than we've downloaded their images. I've had some free time, so I ground the pair of them through several image reconstruction algorithms I found on the net. I am prepared to show the result, provided nobody bills me for the time.
Show it,
said Trent. The screen stayed where it was.
Reconstruction is not a science. Each algorithm came to various conclusions,
said Cricket.
They take a smear and ask what shapes could have made it, and each grades its own guessing as it goes. None of the images should be taken as 100% accurate, nor can I vouch for the effectiveness of the reconstruction.
Just show us, Cricket,
said Trent. The galley screen changed and 3 shapes came up on it, side by side, clay gray, unfinished. The first was a drift of cloud with edges. The second was tall, 6 foot tall or more, narrow, hooded or cowled, with nothing where a face would go. The reconstruction had found no face to give it. The third was a tall 2-legged thing that looked like a cat, with a smear trailing off behind it that the algorithm had labeled propulsion. The cat looked like it had bad gas and was walking away from its own cloud.
Its confident pick is the cat,
said Cricket.
The trailing feature is rendered as smoke propulsion. I'm quoting.
It got the first real laughter that Galley had heard in a long while, and it went on a while, and nobody was sorry.
It's 2 bad frames,
said Trent.
Sensor ghosts. You stack one artifact on another artifact. You get a third artifact. That's the entire story of that screen.
He said it level, in order, the same speech he'd given over the first frame months ago, and he looked at the shapes the whole time he said it, and did not quite look away after.
The cat has my vote,
said Sable.
Reckon I've shipped with worse.
Whatever it is, it has a salvage value of 0,
said Remo.
There is no listed market.
The tall one got 1 joke, a dockmaster at rent time and its laugh, and nothing further. The cloud got no takers at all. The cards were still on the table. Nobody had picked them back up yet.
For the record,
said Cricket,
no candidate clears 40%. I would not stake a hull fee on any of the 3.
Then it's nothing,
said Trent.
3 guesses at nothing.
The candidates score under 40,
said Cricket.
The cross-match between the 2 frames scores 93.
Trent looked at the number a while.
Meaning what?
said Trent.
Meaning whatever it is,
said Cricket.
It is the same thing, in both.
Sarn stood in the galley hatch, in from his rounds. Nobody had marked him there.
What do you mean by the same thing?
said Sarn.
I mean, with 93% certainty, whatever was on the Millie's Bite was also on our ship,
said Cricket. The mood shifted instantly. Nobody followed it up. Sable gathered the deck and squared it. Remo counted his matchsticks into their tin. Ofa stayed where she was, at the warm end of the counter, and did not stir. The screen held the 3 gray shapes a while longer. Then the rotation took them, and the burn numbers came back up, range thrust, hours to Colvane. But the match figure stayed where Cricket had left it, small in the corner of the glass. 93. The burn numbers ticked on toward Colvane. The figure in the corner had nothing to tick toward. It stayed. Nobody said anything about it. The cards went in their drawer, the cups got carried to the rack. The galley emptied, one good night at a time, and the number stayed in the corner of the glass. Until someone reached across and dimmed the screen for the night. It was Sable. Her hand still